two things that jump into my mind here. The first is the obvious need for, I hate to use the word physical therapy because that really gets misconstrued a lot, but basically deliberate exercise that strengthens those muscles. When I used to be a cyclist, one of the challenges of that versus any sport truly is you're sort of in one plane, one dimension, right? So you get very, very strong quads, glutes, and hams. Your glute med and min do very little. You're not really doing any abduction of the hip. And as such, you get a very tight tensor fasciae lata. A lot of cyclists get really bad IT band pain because they just lack that strength there. And so an obvious way to fix this, which I was very lucky that I was able to fix this non-surgically because I was having debilitating IT band pain, was simply doing a lot of strengthening for the hip abductors. So that at least suggested to me that you could be preventive in some way.
If I had any muscle that needed to be worked on and I had to pick one muscle group, it would be that muscle group, starting from early teens. It is implicated in so many lower extremity injuries at the hip and the knee. A weak gluteus medius, weak abductors can cause a lot of injury. And I do believe that the stronger they are, it's almost like bones. The higher the bone density you get early on, then
the higher your glider,
that's
the
right.
longer it
That's
rides.
right.
Yeah.
Because it's going to degenerate. It is just going to happen. And so the stronger and healthier the tendon is at a starting point, this is sort of how I think about this. First of all, not only are you likely to have less injury, and I'm talking about ACL injuries too, I'm talking about
knee injury, it holds back the valgus,
yes,
everything that
exactly,
we're going to talk about in the knee.
Exactly. Hip fractures, which we started to talk about a little in the elderly, that too. These muscles are incredibly strong. And the hip flexors too. There was a study done out of South Korea that looked, it was an imperfect study, but it was pretty decent. They took a group of, I think it was retrospectively evaluated, but they took CAT scans of people who were in for a hip fracture, a femoral neck fracture, elderly population, and they measured the volume of their psoas muscles. So this is the psoas muscle, and this is the iliacus. Together they make the iliopsoas muscle, attaches here.
And this is what picks your leg up.
That's what lifts your leg up. So if you stumble, you pick your leg up to save yourself. The volume of that muscle was significantly smaller than that of an aged matched control group who were getting CAT scans for other reasons. Now, we don't know why they were getting CAT scans, so that's, it's a little bit confounding, but it showed that there was a significant decrease in volume in those patients who have hip fractures. So we know that hip muscle strength, so the important to get the abductors strong, the hip flexors strong. The adductors, the problem with the hip flexors is that we're always sitting. So even if they're strong, they're often tight because we're always in this position. So it's important to see how your hip flexors are, make sure that they're flexible, because an imbalance in the flexibility of that muscle group will also impact the antagonistic muscles in the back, the gluteus maximus, which extend the hip, and the hamstrings, which also extend the hip. So these are, it's fine balance. But if I could work on anything to help prevent these things later, I think this is a good place to start.
The other thing that I've really migrated to over the past decade as I've become very obsessed with all of these muscles, in particular those hip adductors, is the importance of training them not just in concentric phase, but also eccentrically. So there are these exercises we do in a training, I don't know, for lack of a better word, philosophy, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, DNS. There's a position called DNS star. I was just doing it this morning. So I'm doing this stuff most days. And you're laying on your side. So if I'm on my right side, my right elbow is down. It's sort of like a plank, but you're on the knee and your hips are up and you're extending yourself forward as you're putting the hip back. So you are eccentrically loading the adductor as you go back, and then you're concentrically loading it as you bring yourself back up. Now, for anybody who's done this, and we've demonstrated these things in other exercise videos, I mean, 5 reps of this slowly, you feel like someone is jamming an ice pick into those muscles. It is remarkable how difficult it is. But you don't need to do a lot. I mean, just doing a little bit of that stuff every day does so much in terms of lower body maintenance. And looking at this picture, I think it's pretty clear why. It's such small muscles that have such an unfavorable angle at their attachment, right? In terms of like the contraction is, it has such an unfavorable lever arm for what it needs to do. So it really has to be strong.